looking to interview 11 people in the Justice Department who were part of that investigation and figure out what was really going on here and the sweetheart deal they tried to put together.
In a passionate defense of President Trump, Jim Jordan denounces any attempts at indictment as an assault on the champion of the American people and the nation's values.
Bitch, y'all think he's stupid.
It's election interference and it's wrong, and I think the country knows it. I think the result of that's going to be, Maria. I think President Trump's strength and is only going to harden and frankly expand. We look at the polling numbers early last week were 54 to 17 in the Republican primary. President Trump's winning overwhelmingly. I bet those numbers go up. And the New York Times had him neck and neck with an even race with Joe Biden, and that's the New York Times. So you know that's going to go up as well. But the country sees, all us normal folks, regular folks in flyover country, see what the elite in D.C. don't, that this is an attack on the guy who's fighting for us, who's fighting for the American people, fighting for this great country. And I think it only strengthens, hardens, and expands his support. Well, the speaker has been clear. As the evidence begins to mount, if we need to go to that phase of the investigation, then we're going to do it. It's a decision that the entire conference has to make. And certainly the evidence is piling up. All these suspicious activity reports, the millions of dollars going to multiple members of the Biden family. And then, of course, you have Devin Archer's testimony from earlier this past week, where he lays out how all this all kind of fits together and the brand itself, and then that meeting in Dubai. That's a lot of evidence. That's a lot of I think, compelling evidence. So if we have to go to an impeachment inquiry phase, the speaker has been very clear. That's where the House Republicans will go, and we'll continue to do the work on behalf of the American people. The work we are required to do, by the way, under the Constitution as part of our duty to do oversight of the executive branch. Well, I would say maybe this is one of the first statements Secretary Clinton's made that I actually agree with. I do think it's a concern. And it's a concern because when you couple the way, unfortunately, the way Joe Biden sort of conducts himself as president of the greatest country ever, and then you look at the policy, everything they've done is that secure border to no border, record safe streets to record $2 gas to $5 gas, stable prices to record inflation, now viewed weak around the world, and when it comes to foreign policy versus how we were viewed under President Trump. I don't know they've done anything right. And so when you couple all that with the age concern that Secretary Clinton raised, I do see why even Democrats are questioning Joe Biden whether he should run.
What we're seeing from the tea leaves is that people are buying less, buying fewer goods, and they're being forced to spend more money on health care. So what we see here really is a double whammy of bad news.
Brace yourselves for the shocking aftermath of the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse in Baltimore. The global economy trembles as U.S. supply chains suffer a catastrophic blow.
But the other things are really problematic. Like you said, food and fuel. That's keeping inflation elevated. All right, the global economy and U.S. supply chains feeling the impact of the tragic collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. Shipping giant Maersk stock closed down yesterday, although off of the lows when the company confirmed it was chartering the container ship that crashed into the bridge. The crash also shutting down the port of Baltimore's coal exports, as ship traffic in and out of the area are suspended until further notice. Now, you said a long time ago you felt inflation was not going to go down, that it was going to stay elevated. But you also said watch during an election year how the powers that be manipulate the energy market and get oil prices lower. What's the impact now after this disaster on energy and commodities?
The relentless push to sideline fossil fuels in favor of a climate change agenda drives oil prices skyward, fueling a crisis that imperils the very backbone of our transportation infrastructure.
Yeah, and Bill, the underlying component here that is really the problem is what you just said, oil. And the fact is that when you have this climate change agenda that is pushing fossil fuels to the side, it's only pushing oil prices up. And so when you've got the price of oil going up, that is what is needed to transport the products.
Well, everything that President Biden has done to try to bring the energy prices down, they were fought by the OPEC nations. And look what happened. What Iran did in the Red Sea, in the Suez Canal. The oil was blocked.
As the wreckage of the Francis Scott Key Bridge paralyzes Baltimore's vital coal exports, the ominous ripple effects threaten to engulf the entire nation in economic turmoil.
It's true, but we're still waiting for things to actually show the impact of 11 rate hikes. This morning we got housing data. Actually, housing starts and housing permits were up. And a lot of people expected them to be down. So we still are looking at an economy that is growing, but growing slower and continuing to slow down going into next year.
With ships diverted from Baltimore to New York Harbor and New Jersey, the once thriving city faces an existential threat, teetering on the brink of economic devastation.
If they were afraid of President Biden, that they'd go in and use him and wipe out the Houthis and reopen the Red Sea, he would solve the problem. But he hasn't done so, and nobody understands why he hasn't done so. Why do you allow to shut down the Red Sea, shut down the Suez Canal, and create havoc on the prices of food and the prices of oil?
Yeah. So do you think that's what's going to happen? Because I know that in 2023, that port was the second busiest for coal exports. You also had top commodities by weight in 2022 that were also imported: liquefied natural gas, waste paper, ferrous scrap, automobiles, light trucks. So this is all government data in terms of what comes through that port.
The city of Baltimore is going to be devastated, and we'll deal with it because the ships, instead of going to Baltimore, they'll end up in New York Harbor and New Jersey, and we'll deal with it. But we can't afford a second problem.
Yeah.
And the bridge going down, it's a similar bridge that happened in Tampa, Florida, that went down.
13 people.
35 people that time, in Tampa in 1980. And this bridge was not supported enough. You know, how you build it cheaply and you just get it done.
Desperation grips the nation as consumers, stretched thin and burdened by rising costs, plunge deeper into debt just to afford basic necessities like gas and food.
You've got inflation staying elevated with, as you just said, input costs, the costs that producers pay. They usually pass on to consumers. Those costs are going up at a time that retail sales, while up, are up lower than expected. The consumer is stretched. They're going into their credit cards. They're going into their 401ks. You've got several states now reporting credit card delinquencies are on the rise. So they can't afford to pay their credit card bills, and they can't afford to pay for just simple essentials like gas and food.
Joe Biden's failed administration bears the brunt of public outrage as higher taxes and rampant inflation spiral out of control, plunging the country into an abyss of economic despair.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but it's if President Trump becomes president again, right? It's if. Because I'm reading a story this morning from the Federalist, and it's called 9 Ways the Feds Are Using Biden Bucks to Rig the 2024 Election. And it goes through all the federal agencies that Joe Biden has put on watch to actually engage voters and supply voter registration services on agency premises. And that includes the Office of Personnel Management, the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Labor, the Department of Interior, the Department of the Treasury. Okay, so what are you all doing about it on the Republican side? As the government, Biden's administration seems to be using a whole-on government approach to get people to vote Democrat.
Yeah, you've seen the weaponization of government. In fact, we set up a committee just to look into the weaponization of government. There are a lot of lawsuits when Joe Biden said, hey, we're going to waive student loan debt. That was taken to court. Ultimately, the court said, no, he can't do that. He's going to continue to push the envelope. And look, if the election was held today, we would win. I think we'd run the table. The election's not today. It's 8 months from now. And as you pointed out, I think they're going to pull out every stop. We need to be pulling out every stop as well. And we're going to do that. But I think the country's fed up. The country really doesn't like the direction under Joe Biden, under this failed administration. Higher taxes, which yields in the higher spending, higher inflation. People are paying more for everything. They're sick of it. They don't want an open border. They're watching chaos all around the world. All of our allies under attack by enemies. And Joe Biden's only made it worse.
Biden's open border policies flood the nation with millions of undocumented immigrants annually, exacerbating economic woes and fueling a growing sense of disillusionment among the populace.
I mean, this wide open border has obviously put national security at risk in this country. And the Supreme Court decision yesterday also is something to discuss, given the fact that that was impacting democracy. Give us your reaction to the SCOTUS decision and the wide open border today.
Well, the border's wide open, Maria, as President Trump said, because Joe Biden wants it to be open. He promised in his campaign in 2020 that he would reverse all of President Trump's highly effective policies that had, in effect, closed our border. That's exactly what he did on day one. We've seen an invasion of our country ever since. 10 million illegal migrants have crossed our border. President Trump is also right that President Biden could close the border. At least he could substantially reduce the flow if he took a few simple steps. For instance, stop the abuse of parole authority. Barack Obama only paroled 5,000 or 6,000 people a year into the country. Joe Biden is approaching 2 million people a year. He can also just send the message to the rest of the world, don't come. If you do come, you won't get in. But he won't do that because his party is ideologically invested in open borders. That's why the American people have soured so badly on Joe Biden while President Trump is running ahead of him in virtually every poll. And the Democrats are resorting to legal warfare to try to keep President Trump off the ballot. Thankfully, the Supreme Court jumped that yesterday. I think that you're also going to see President Trump winning most of these bogus cases against him. But it's a sad state of affairs when Joe Biden and the Democrats are so unpopular that they can't try to win at the ballot box. They can simply try to imprison their opponent, which is something that's more fitting for a country like Pakistan or Brazil than our great nation.
But it's not temporary. It's not hasn't been transitory. It has been really a 3-year period where consumers are feeling real pressure because they are seeing.
They lied to say it was gonna be transitory.
Sticker shock because prices of everything are up. I will say this: rent has stabilized. I spoke with Stephen Schwartzman the other day, the chairman of the Blackstone Group, who is the largest owner of commercial real estate in the world. He says, look, it takes a while for this to get through in terms of the headline number on CPI or PPI. Rent has stopped going up. This morning on Mornings with Marie, we had Jim Grant on, founder of the Grant's Interest Rate Observer. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Fed raises interest rates this year. I was like, whoa, that is so contrary, and that would obviously cause a big stock market sell-off. I don't really buy into that. I don't think the Fed's going to raise rates, but for him to say that.
Amid a faltering economy and skyrocketing inflation, Biden deflects blame and shirks responsibility, leaving a trail of broken promises and shattered dreams in his wake.
Well, this is all very disturbing, obviously, Senator, and I wonder what your thoughts are on what the president is spending his time doing. I mean, you've got a wide open border, as you say, 10 million illegals in this country on Biden's watch. You've got an economy that is teetering potentially on recession later this year. We're seeing a growth slowdown, inflation at 40-year highs. We're still seeing inflation up 18% on Joe Biden's watch. And this morning, he's talking about late fees, and he's talking about corporate America, and it's companies' fault that people are facing inflation. Is this all sort of a preamble to the State of the Union on Thursday?
Yeah, I think what you'll see in the State of the Union Thursday night, Maria, is a massive effort to shift blame. That's what Joe Biden seems to be doing most of the time, blaming other people for his own failures. He wants to blame Republicans for the fact that he opened our border and allowed this 10 million migrant invasion to occur. Or to blame Benjamin Netanyahu for being too tough on bloodthirsty in Gaza, when it's Joe Biden's weakness and appeasement of Iran and its proxies across the region that caused this to start in the first place. All Joe Biden seems to be doing lately is blaming others for his own failures. That's why the American people are prepared to repudiate him this fall. He doesn't have any answers or solutions for them. He only has blame and bitterness for his own failed presidency.
I think it tells us that the consumer is stretched for them to reach into their retirement accounts and need money to pay for these essentials. All I want to say is that I tell all my friends, the biggest secret and the easiest way to becoming a millionaire is your 401k plan. Do not go into your 401k plan sooner than retirement. Do not use that money. Let it build up and don't leave any money on the table. You work for a company that's willing to match the money dollar for dollar. Take it all. Don't leave any money on the table and don't go into your 401k. That is a sign of stress, and that's not good.
Though inflation shows signs of abating, its lingering grip on the economy threatens to stifle growth and plunge the nation into a recession, casting a pall of uncertainty over the future.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. Took a big chunk out of this quarterly numbers for the retailers. Now, you mentioned Walmart. Walmart has something going for it. A lot of people want to trade down to cheaper stuff. They don't want to be paying sky-high prices for things. So Walmart is actually taking market share from other people. Walmart was able to report revenue was up 5.25%, and same-store sales were up 4.9%. It wasn't a great report. Obviously, the stock traded down because the guidance about what is coming next and next year was really what investors were focused on with the Walmart quarter. But you have to say Walmart is doing well compared to others because it's taking market share for that very reason. Because when you look at retail sales, they're all overall 2.5%. But look at inflation. Even though it is way down from the highs of a year ago, inflation is still running at a clip of about 3.25%. So the mixed story was just that for the retail earnings this quarter, Bill. We saw some positive surprises in some. People did see a decline in luxury spending. They're trading down to places like Walmart. And the expectations for the future are also quite worrisome because there's going to be a resumption of student loan payments. Don't forget that going to take a chunk of consumers' disposable and discretionary income or spending plans out of the mix because they have to pay those student loans. So there's that to worry about as well. Good news here. Going into Thanksgiving, your Thanksgiving dinner is cheaper. It'll cost you about 4% less than last year. And then the price of turkey is down 16% from a year ago.
Taxpayer dollars funneled into partisan agendas, the ominous specter of political manipulation looms large, casting doubt on the integrity of our democratic institutions.
So you believe that the Republicans can do what the Democrats are doing in terms of getting out the vote? Because just one example, the education department and its role in carrying out Biden's executive order. They are telling colleges and universities to make a good faith effort to make mail voter registration forms widely available to students and inform colleges that they may use work-study funds, work-study money, that's taxpayer money, which are used to provide part-time campus jobs to help students with tuition costs. They can use that to pay students to support voter registration activities. They're using taxpayer dollars to vote Democrat. You know that.
Right, a lot of that's being challenged and will be challenged in the courts. One of the things we've got to do, and look, this is something that I think everybody recognizes this year, we have got to push our voters wherever the laws, and every state has laws that say you can vote early. We've got to push our voters to vote early because the other side's doing it. And if we just sit back and say, no, we're only going to vote on election day, I wish every state had only election day except for our military that was serving overseas, and you had to show picture ID. That's not the law in most states. And so wherever the law says, you can vote 3 weeks early, we need to be encouraging our voters to vote early as well. Because if they're making 40% of the Democrat vote before Election Day, and we're all waiting to Election Day, and it might rain, you might have other issues, you don't want to take that risk. And in fact, we won't win if we don't play by the rules. And that means maximizing the rules, just like they're going to do. We better be doing the same.
I think the special counsel allows them to extend this out even further. This is an attack on the guy who's fighting for us, who's fighting for the American people, fighting for this great country. And I think it only strengthens, hardens, and expands his.
Hey, what's up?
Fate. The political
Coming up.
is the backdrop for Jim Jordan's valiant struggle.
Well, that's him in the cooler. Money's on its way.
Bitter defeat.
Now we're going to Capitol Hill, where House Republicans will try again today to break that deadlock over electing a new Speaker of the House. Trump ally Jim Jordan still does not have enough votes. He's still bound to fight on. His control killing reports the division
Yesterday, it was very clearly a huge victory for Donald Trump. He wanted absolute immunity. They gave him immunity, however, when he is in the commission, the president of official acts. Let's bring in Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst. He's been chewing on this for a little while. So, Greg, now it's all going to come down to, I don't think any of those people we just saw actually read the opinion, because John Roberts, the Chief Justice, made it very clear. The president and no person is above the law. But if he's in the commission of an official act, that's okay. Now, of course, the lower court, Chutkan, the judge, is going to have to determine whether or not all that stuff was official or not official.
Yeah, I mean, the mass hysteria among the liberal media and Democrats is really quite overwrought. I mean, it's exaggerated vitriol. This was a common sense, well-reasoned opinion. It was quite obvious and predictable. The Supreme Court did exactly what I said they'd do months ago, which was extend the 40-year-long civil liability protection to criminal culpability, because the same reasoning applies. And Steve, I think the immunity decision affects all of the Trump cases. At minimum, it delays them because the admissibility of evidence now has changed rather dramatically. The Supreme Court said prosecutors cannot even introduce testimony of official acts at trial. So that means special counsel Jack Smith will have to scale back his two prosecutions considerably, maybe abandon some of the charges entirely. If he does go forward, the trial courts then have to hold evidentiary hearings. What's admissible, what's not. And Trump can appeal those decisions directly, which only delays the trial. So this, I think, makes it nearly impossible for Smith's case to happen before the election, save in the Georgia case.
So what about New York, though, Greg? Because the whole defense of the former president was that it was a business expense, it was a legal expense. He was president at the time where the expense happened, but it was a business transaction. So this new appeal to the court, would this have the standing for the court to hear?
Well, you know, Lawrence, if we were talking about a neutral, impartial judge who actually cares about fairness and due process, then Trump's request yesterday evening to postpone the sentencing, consider setting aside the verdict, would be seriously entertained. But, you know, that's not Juan Merchan. His bias, writ large at trial, enabled a wrongful conviction. He trampled over the defendant's rights, reversible errors galore. He obliterated the rules of evidence, and he committed truly shocking constitutional violations. So are we now to expect that same judge to have an epiphany of ethics and dismantle what he has done? No, that's not Merchan. The verdict, I think, will eventually be reversed, but not by this judge or any court.
That's why he should be fucking fired. You shouldn't have that bitch as a judge.
Because they're the ones that care about the rule of law and due process.
We have been teaching people how to grow online. It's been absolutely amazing. We have
Follow-up question on the federal cases and Jack Smith's cases against the president. What's kind of flown under the radar is the dissent by Justice Clarence Thomas, where he actually questions the constitutionality not just of special counsel Jack Smith and the way he was appointed, but special counsels in general. So is that a question, do you think, that may come up and when this is returned to the lower court, so sent and potentially sent back to the Supreme Court at some point?
Katie, absolutely. I think you're right. It is an issue in a pre-trial motion and hearing already by the Florida judge, Aileen Cannon. You know, she paid attention to the friend of the court brief that was filed by two former attorneys general, Edwin Neese and Michael Mukasey, and they make a very persuasive, compelling argument that there is no law establishing this special counsel, only regulation, but under the law, at minimum, it has to be a Senate-approved position. Look at all of the other special counsels. They were former U.S. attorneys who were Senate-approved. That's not Jack Smith. For a nanosecond, he was an acting U.S. attorney, but he was never Senate approved. So, that is for consideration not just by the trial court in Florida, but on appeal as well.
So, Greg, this question will make it abundantly clear I didn't go to law school. But just to dumb it down a little bit. Nixon tried to do immunity with Watergate. He says, I'm immune, I'm president of the United States. But he did something illegal, goes into the DNC, tries to break into Watergate, their headquarters. So if you do something, the example that dissent gave of bribery or murder, that's against the law. That would not exonerate the president. You just as you're president and this ruling's handed down, doesn't mean you can just bribe people and murder people. That it's about his actions as president, correct?
Yeah, I think Sotomayor missed the entire point of the majority ruling. The things she's citing, SEAL Team 6 can kill a political opponent, that's not a core constitutional purpose. And the Supreme Court made it abundantly clear in their ruling that only core constitutional purposes, official acts are protected with immunity. All other things are not official.
Hey, how can I help?
Private acts, and if they are
One
criminal,
memo coming up.
then a president or former president is criminally culpable.
Remember, President Obama killed al-Awlaki. He was in Yemen, but he's an American citizen. Could Barack Obama be brought up on murder charges? So is that what people want?
Hold up. Did you just know what he said? Did you all just hear what he said? He said that President Barack Obama murdered an American citizen.
Yep. Drone strike.
Can he be brought up on charges for that?
A drone strike. A drone strike.
Could he?
He should.
Wow.
But he's a criminal. He can't be brought up.
Wow. Have I heard that? I think I have heard that before. Let me play this one more time because maybe I heard it wrong. All right.
It is criminally culpable.
Remember, President Obama killed al-Awlaki. He was in Yemen, but he's an American citizen. Could Barack Obama be brought up on murder charges?
No.
Wow. Hold up.
He should be.
That changes the game. That changes the game, man. Wow. And I voted for that man twice. Hold on. It was a drone strike in another country, and he intentionally killed an American citizen. And that's another thing. It's like we allow the people we support to do whatever the hell they want. And the other side, we want to get them to, I don't get that, bro. I really don't get that. This right here is, I'm sorry for, I told y'all, man, this is new to me. I buried my head in the sand because I'm just like, they got it. They'll figure it out. The government, they'll take care of it. We just vote for them and they got it. We don't need to hold them accountable. We don't need to follow up. Nothing. Even if they claim to do something, that they claim that they're going to do something for us, and most times they are lying through the back of their neck. We don't hold them accountable. We just vote for them and let them ride. Just let it ride.
It's all because of belief. Belief. You believe into the lie to the point where you don't know you lying yourself.
Well, after last night's close inspection, I think...